This week, we're going to hit Mark up for some training tips. They're going to talk about a horse that's terrified of a rope around its back legs, why a quarter horse that's now 13 years old can sometimes be super, super great and super anxious, and how to get a horse to back willingly. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Mark, let's talk about the horse that gets terrified of the rope behind it. It comes from Australia, and she has literally just purchased a Welsh unbroken 6-year-old. She's been doing all of your leading work and getting him to trot up to pressure, to lead and trot up to the belly rope. He can stand on the mounting block and move him around. He's coming along great. He's finding that he's very smart. But he found that, even though he's fine doing the rugging and doing up the leg straps, she accidentally threw a rope just a little bit too far and went to pull the rope back. And as it went around his back legs, it caused a bit of a problem. So she'd like to know, what is the best way to overcome this? She's loving all the training that you've been giving, and she's been using your leading training on her other 2 riding ponies.
The one thing, and I will say this to everybody, and I want everybody to listen to this, is if your horse has any inclination to run away from ropes around the back end, be very spooky about that and have a strong flight instinct to that stimulant, regardless whether it lets you rug it or not, and it's okay with the leg straps, do not rug them and do not put them in the paddock with a rug on if they have that flight instinct, okay? Why? Is because rug bolting is the last thing you'll ever want to see, and it will set your horse up in a negative way that will sometimes make things kind of very hard to fix, because the trauma from it will make that back end area really bad. And also why I'm sort of putting this red flag warning up is because I've had horses at clinics that have carried a rug for 4 years, and then suddenly it got caught up in a funny way because it ripped or something like that, got hung up on something, got caught around their legs or over the head, and they've just gone ballistic and just galloped and kicked and run, and they've had the rug on for 4 years, but when it all went out of context and it grabbed them in a different way, they fully panicked, okay? So just something to think about, because if they're that flinchy around the back end, it might be okay while everything, as I say, is in context and in the right pattern and order, but if it goes wrong, it's not going to be worth it, especially with those sensitive little Welshies, that there's already something in there that's making that horse really frightened around the back end. So I would definitely sort of, not rug it until this is really sorted out, but getting them used to pressure, okay, so, or something that worries them around the back end. So the best way to get a horse to be less flinchy, frightened, and have that negative kind of escape response to pressure is teach them to control pressure. How do you teach a horse to control pressure? You teach them to lead. So what I mean is, if a horse in a lead rope, for instance, on their head goes, "Oh, I don't like that pole pressure," and shakes a little bit, you gently hold the pressure until they start to go, "Oh, I just stepped forward a little bit and that pressure softened. Oh, wow, I'm controlling that pressure. I'm pushing and it's firming, and I'm gently releasing and it's releasing." But it's not pressure release. It's controlling the amount of pressure by doing something constructive, okay? You can desensitize a horse and rub them with a stick 1,000 times at a standstill, but because the horse doesn't learn to control the pressure of the stick, they never quite get comfortable with whatever the stimulant, stick or rope or whatever. So where I'm going with this is, you have to desensitize your horse a little bit in an area, but the best thing that's going to fix it is them controlling the pressure. So I would rub your horse with a long stick around those areas where you find the flinchy areas are. I'd slowly touch and go for a while. So I might be rubbing across the back, and the back's okay, the hip's okay, but when you go down the leg a bit, the horse gets a bit flinchy. I'll get to that flinchy area just to start, and then I'll take the stick back to the safe area where it feels okay and go back and touch and go. And I'll do that while I'm leading the horse around, go close to that area, into that area, and then disappear. So the horse knows that the pressure will be retreating before the horse needs to retreat from the pressure, okay? So that's quite also good for horses that are really tough to bridle and stuff like that from a bad experience. But eventually the pressure is going to stay there. So basically, when the horse gets a bit better, you'll go to the sort of sensitive spot, 1, 2, that's enough, and then you might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's enough. Until the horse is going, oh, you can hold that stick around that area for longer, and I'm okay with that. And so I might just rub those areas where I can control the horse at the front with the lead rope and have a long stick and rub all those areas. And then if it's like a lunging whip, you've got a tail on the end of the whip that can flick around them a little bit, start represent like it'll represent a rope later on, or the feeling of a rope. And then, you slowly, do a lot of that on both sides, and make sure your horse is moving and following a feel. If the horse gets too tense, pull on the lead rope until the horse softens to the lead rope and lets go of the thought. Because at the end of the day, if anything gets caught around the horse's back end, it has to trust the lead rope can take over and help it soften. So I will always take the tension out of the horse through the leading rein, the lead rope when I'm on the ground, and lead them into softness when they get tense about something around their back end. Okay, so that's let go of that, and I want to override. It's almost like the lead rope's an override button. You think you're going to run away from that rope around your leg, follow the lead rope instead. I'm going to override that, and that's why you always gently override and get them to lead a little bit until they're soft in that lead rope when tension arises. Until you can rub them with the stick, lead them backwards and forwards in your hand quietly and around you, and they're okay with that stick around their legs in all those back end areas. And then you integrate to a rope, where you can just sort of gently let a rope hang over, or you just put a rope on a stick and just rub them with the rope on a stick, doing a similar thing. Then I'd teach them to lead in a breeching rope, one that goes around their rump, and teach them to sort of move forwards. But firstly, before I teach them to move forward, I might just let them carry it a little bit and then back up while they got that breeching rope. So they learn to move their feet backwards while that rope's hanging around their back end. And that's why I'm saying earlier on, you're always gently interrupting your horse with leading. So then when that rope is on them and the breeching rope's around them, you can back them into that. And then I get them to lead with the breeching rope forwards, lead them backwards with the halter, pick them up with the breeching rope again until they can rock forwards and backwards and learn to control that pressure around their rump by yielding and softening. So then they make good decisions around that pressure, and instead of escaping and make it disappear, they just follow the feel of that pressure. And then you just work your way around, leading them from both sides with that breeching rope, and until you can go back over and start to sort of dangle ropes. And the other thing I do is I'm always, with horses like that, I might throw a rope on the ground and just drag it while I'm leading them. Even if it's a long lead rope, you might drag half of it on the ground so they see that rope's moving around them all the time. And then basically, if you give them an alternative through good leading, that you can interrupt them when they get a bit of a fright, they start to get exposed to all these ropes, and then lead from a breeching rope, then basically you'll get to a stage that the horse will, all that back end worry will start to dissipate.
Your next training question mark is from Linda from Australia, and this is the one with the slightly older mare, 13-year-old quarter horse mare, who can be absolutely superb 1 minute, but then within 24 hours she can change completely into a worried horse. So Linda's been doing training with her and taking her quite slowly in a process that's not too unsimilar to what you've been. She knows, however, that she's missed a few pieces along the way and she's struggling to find them. So an example of what happens is recently she took her to a show. She got there early and prepared her well. She was soft and alert and she felt that they were on track. But the moment they entered the ring, she became tense and high-headed and everything was done in a hurry. She had completely lost her. So she'd just like to know what your thoughts are on where she can identify what she might have missed in the training.
Yeah, it's the very common scenario, very common that there's a horse that's fine and then blows up. And you might be reading her really well and saying that she's attentive, she's soft when she's going good, but then she sort of gets overwhelmed. I'd be saying she might be one of those horses, and not all horses look as hard as other horses, when they sort of a bit shut out or a bit obedient. So she might be a horse that might focus on maybe she does process the environment a bit, but maybe when she's, you're riding and working with her, she might focus on you a fair bit. And that what makes her attentive and soft. Maybe when she goes to a new environment that suddenly challenges her, then all of a sudden she goes, I really can't cope with this. Because some horses do just listen to us and they're not processing much around them until they really have to. And that can cause them to blow up. So that could be one of the reasons. And with those types of horses, I really look for when I squeeze them under saddle and ask them to go forward. Do they think forward? Do they process their environment as they're going? Are they, you might have a good gauge of her and you might be reading her reasonably well, or there could be a few little things in there that you might be not reading when she's in her soft environment, when she's in her soft state, because I do have that quite a lot. I've got a nice horse, works really nice, but then at certain times, at certain places, when it blows up, and I can't seem to help it. And usually they're semi-shut down or shut out, shutting out. So some horses look around a little bit and they're attentive, but then when we're working with them, they over focus on us and the questions, and it's almost like leading somebody. And you said, okay, are you triophobic? And they're like, yeah, I'm triophobic. And it's like, oh man, imagine that phobia. We're walking through a forest and there's trees everywhere, but they're triophobic. And I'm like, well, how am I going to lead them through the forest with all the trees? Because we've got to get to the other side of the forest. So you tell that person, just look at my backpack and stare at the backpack. And while you're staring at the backpack, can you count how many little dots of mud are on it? And they just follow you counting mud dots, and that sort of gets them not to think about the trees. So then they just follow you, follow your backpack, and sort of block the trees out a little bit and avoid them. So I get a lot of horses that I see that actually they're soft, they're attentive, they're not really shut down to the person in the sense, they're not just but they just over focus on the legs, the reins, and they just listen to the person, and they're just going along a bit on like an autopilot where they're not processing their environment until they get to a new environment that's really stimulating and they can't not process it. And then all of a sudden, because they've been coping by just, mud dots, or you were listening to the person and focusing on the person all the time, and that happens under saddle as well as just on the ground, they suddenly get an overload and have to think about everything and they can't do it. So that could be the problem. And if that is the problem, then when you're riding in any situation, you have to sort of see your horse processing and thinking forward. So your riding style has to change to give your horse more responsibility, micromanage less. So I'm just going to sit here and just squeeze you, and you're going to find perpetual motion. I don't care where you go, you're going to be lost, but you can't focus on me very much because I'm just going to be sitting there waiting for you to travel and think forward, and really get them traveling, thinking forward and processing by only saying, don't stop there, don't stop there. And that could be in an arena to start with. And then when they stopping, they won't know where to go, and they'll go, well, I don't know what to do. I'm going to have to do this myself. And you're kind of almost forcing them to have to think for themselves and search. But I could be on the wrong path now and telling you the wrong thing. But that is one big reason why horses sometimes have that, like the scenario that you're talking about. Another one is that she is just a bit shut out, and this would still help her, or shut down a bit. And then some of the tools and some of the educational tools that you're offering, she's obedient to, but she's actually not soft to, as in, so she might be gently anxiety stacking a little bit. So, you go through and test the main things that you use. Your leg aid, I put a squeeze on my horse. Does it create tension? The horse might still go forward, but is it creating tension and a bit more anxiety in the horse because I squeeze it with my legs? When I pick up the right rein and I'm just standing on a loose rein and I pick up the right rein, does the horse look a bit more tense and go, right rein, and is it adding anxiety? If I go through all my tools and I notice that they're adding more anxiety, then actually the horse has been compliant in a safe environment. When the environment changes, that compliance, he sort of disappears, because the horse is also worried about what we're helping it with and what we're guiding it with. So we've got to watch out for that. So yeah, I think you've got to try a few different angles, but the main thing is your horse thinking and processing all of the time. Or is it handing over some of the responsibility to you? And when you're working it on the ground, same thing when you're leading it places. Lead it at a distance so it learns to walk at a distance and process its environment itself as it's going, not just follow you like a target. And like there was a horse the other day at a clinic that blew up really bad when a horse would leave the arena. But when I found the main red flag, which was its tension, it had tension about certain things. It was still getting, certain training tension. When I fixed that training tension, the horse's mindset changed completely. And then when horses left, it didn't worry at all. So it got really soft. So that's something to think about.
Your last question for today, last training question for today, is from Wendy, and it's about backing up willingly. She runs an equine assisted learning program, and as part of teaching the participants, she gets them to back their horses out of their personal space, so teaching boundaries. These horses have been asked to do these tasks 6 years now. She's wondering how she can spice it up for them. They seem a bit bored and sometimes resist.
I've thought about this question, and I'm going to give you, I think, the reason why the horses are getting like that. I don't really want to give you the tool of how to spice it up, though that's the question that you've asked me, because the reason that the horses are getting a bit sour and, resistant or whatever's happening is more important than fixing it and giving them a better backup or some other tools. Because you're doing equine assisted learning, there's a high chance that there's learners learning on these horses and asking the same question to these horses over 6 years. Now the problem is horses learn, well, soft horses follow feel, and they learn, and learning is like a mastership. You've got to master something. Master something eventually, become very good at it. Becoming very good at it, the horse finds the path of least resistance, and they're comfortable with pressure. They're backing up softly, they're turning softly, whatever the thing is, they're doing it well and it feels good. Otherwise, there's no purpose to it. So a horse strives to learn by, as I say, finding that path of least resistance, and then there's a reason for it. There's always a reason for something that they're doing. When you're teaching students on horses, the students are learning on the horse, so their clarity, their consistency, their pressure is always going to be different, and they're going to, when the horse does the right thing, they might be still not responding in the wrong way to show the horse is doing the right thing, and that sort of stuff. So the horses go, well, what's going on? Why am I doing this all the time? And the message is always different. And I'm the one that seems to be making mistakes all the time, but it's not me making the mistakes. It's you guys that are making the mistakes. So then they're going to get disinterested, sour, and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to give anyone the answer to how to spice it up, how to make their horses back up better, because they're kind of using them as a pincushion for people to learn on. So I think somehow you have to have a way of getting the students better at applying feel and questions to horses before you use the horses as the Godivers. Like a doctor, like a Godiva, the doctors who are going to be surgeons, they're not going to just be practicing on 10-year-old school kids to see if they can do brain surgery. They're going to practice on Godivers so they don't make a mistake. The whole idea when they become a surgeon is they do not make mistakes at all. It's a 110% success rate in do not make mistake. Okay, so what I'm saying is, we've got to we're mastering something to make our horses feel good, because they're trying really hard to feel good in it too. So if that answer makes sense, then somehow you'll have to find that answer yourself.
It's a hard one.
It's you're trying to do the right thing and do a good thing for people, and it's nice to incorporate horses into it, but there's always a risk. There's always a risk in any animal that we're using for things, whether it be a trail riding centre, a schoolmaster horse that teaches beginners on. All the schoolmasters I met, they're shut down and they're hardened, and they're not got much spice left in them. So, and I don't know, there's so much different equine assisted learning out there that there's so many different programs that are offering different styles of things. So I really sort of, not sure about every single one of them. But my guess is if we're getting people to learn some things around the horses, that we have to be very careful that we're not, dulling them.
Thanks, Mark, for today. That's great. We'll be back next week answering more questions. See you then.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast. This episode is one of hundreds more. So if you are interested in learning all about how Mark trains and changes horses' mindsets, and yes, he really does do that, so that they are more open and willing, listen to another. They are packed with practical insights that everyone can use.